this is Rochelle with the Healing Rose, and today I am going to take you along as I trim this deck. So this is the Crystal Visions Tarot by Jennifer Galasso, which is a gorgeous deck from US Games Ltd. It's just a really lovely matte finish. It glides beautifully. I have seen this deck trimmed and edged, and I absolutely love the way it looks. And makes it a little bit smaller, so it's not quite pocket-sized. Once you start taking the edges off, it's just a little bit smaller and a little bit more portable. So I am going to trim this, and I haven't decided yet. I did some test swabs of the edging, so I have two metallic stamps. I've got a platinum and a silver, and then the two different markers, and I'm kind of leaning towards this color, but maybe with a little bit of silver stamp over top for the edge. We'll see once I get there. I might not get there today, but who knows? All right, so let's get to it. All right, so the first thing I like to do is set up my guide. So I've got the Fiskars little guillotine style trimmer, and if you look right down the very edge here, you can see when it lines up, and if we're going to be over or if we're going to be right on the line there. It looks like that might be okay. And then once I think I know where I am, I have a couple pieces of paper that I've trimmed down, and I put them on this washi, and then I line up the washi with the edge of the card and put this down. So I have a solid guide, and this is easy to move. And the first trim is always the most stressful because you don't want to take too much off, and you want to make sure everything is really well lined up. If you think you might need to adjust it over at all, now is the time. So this is the one part of it that I don't rush. After this, everything else goes pretty smooth. For the most part. Okay, I think it's right there. So it's like, honestly, if you really take your time right at the beginning and get your setup perfect, then it's gonna really serve you well for the entire rest of the trim. Okay, so let's see. So we need to take just a smidge more off. And I'd rather take off too little than too much, honestly, on the first pass when I'm setting up that first card. Because once you've done the cut, then once you've done it, then you're done. Every other card is going to have to match that. So I'd rather take off those tiny bits. Okay, so it's right there. I'm going to hold that steady, and I'm just going to get this snugged right up against that. So everything's solid. And now every single card I'm going to go through, and I'm going to trim that right-hand side of the card. And you can see, like, the last cut I made was just like a sliver. It was just a tiny, tiny sliver of paper that came off. So once we've, so we're not taking off a lot at once when we're getting to that point where we're sure we have it exactly where we want, so that when we snug up the next card, we're not actually touching any paper on the way down. Everything is just perfect there. All right. And then we're just going to continue on with every single card in the deck. So it's nice to make sure when you put these in here, they're snug, they're secure, and then you're really holding down and pushing down on the guide as well. And that keeps that edge from shifting, because sometimes if you don't hold here, I discovered this and you're just holding the card, there can be a slight little movement that happens, and it's very subtle. It might be like 1/4 of a millimeter, but it will be noticeable. In the end, you'll have one card that's like slightly off from where the rest of them are. And it will drive you crazy when you're putting your cards back together. Unless you're somebody that's not super particular and doesn't really mind, but once I discovered that I was able to trim decks, it made me so happy. I can't even tell you. All right. So we'll just bring you back when I'm done doing the rest of these. All right, so we've done one side, and I always like to just take it and set it on a nice solid surface, and then you can feel if there's any that are really sticking out, like this one. And then I might just double check, make sure it's really secure, and give it another quick little trim of the edge, because sometimes when we're rushing, and honestly, I do this really quickly now when I go through. This one's a little longer. Let's see. Yep, I think that's it. So we'll put this in, make sure it's nice and snug. Yeah. So sometimes they do shift a little, or we're not super exact, right? So now I will do the other side. So I'll put them all upside down. So it's not too bad. I mean, it's pretty quick. That took me maybe 5 minutes. So then we'll go from the other side and we'll get it set up so that we're in a nice alignment with that edge. And it helps if you're taking the time to be a little bit more exact. Okay, how does that look? Oh, not too bad. Maybe a smidge over. Yeah, I think that's probably gonna be good. So it helps sometimes to move it a little bit away from the edge of the blade. So this is just the little fixars, Fiskars. I got it, ordered it on Amazon. And I just move my guide over and I'll do a trim. All right, so that has left a little bit of white edge, so I'll move it over just a smidge more. And again, I don't care if this part takes a little bit longer, just to get that. Nope. Okay. Sometimes it's not quite enough. All right, I think that will be it right there. All right, so then I put that, I don't have the blade all the way down, so it's actually resting right against the edge of the card there, so that it will actually help for me to nudge my guide up against it. And let's just double check if we're, I think we need to adjust it a little bit more. So this part can be a little bit fussy, but basically once you're set up with your guide, no, I want a little more. Just a smidgen more, because I still have a tiniest hint of white border on the edge of this card, which I definitely don't want. Okay, so that's good. We'll hold that really snug. Get this snugged up against it. All right, and then we're off trimming the rest of the stack. So once you're set up, it actually goes quite quickly. And if you look It's just taking off that black edge of the border and then a little bit of the print there. So something's a little, let me see. Yeah, so sometimes I double check by going from this side just to see if it's not quite level. Just flip the card over so that we're, whoops. All right, this way. And we'll see. All right, so that should be, we should be pretty good now, I think. That's the edge and that's the edge. Just make sure. All right, there we go. So those two seem pretty good. All right. I should. All right, let's turn these so that they are. Yep, that's lovely. Okay, now that we've got that going, once you're set at, it's just seconds per card. It does not take long at all once you're actually have all your guides set and everything. I'd say probably the first deck you do might take you like 10 minutes aside, but once you have it going where you're comfortable with it and you trust yourself because you know you've double and triple checked everything, it flies pretty quick. And this is actually a really inexpensive deck from US Games. So if I totally screw up, I'm not going to be completely heartbroken over it. Because I can always get another one. It won't be the absolute end of the world, but I mean, without the white borders on them, the images are, I find it, for me personally, it really actually draws the images out more so. It makes it easier to focus on the artwork instead of just, somehow for me, like when there's really big borders that are actually distracting, they're not an artistic, they don't add anything to the card to have the borders. I find it sometimes actually is, it makes me just where I'm just looking at the words then. I'm just reading what the card is as opposed to really looking at the visuals on the card. So I find for me personally, it actually helps me to experience it in a little bit different way. There we go. That's a little better. And then usually when I'm done this, I will go through and I will double check if there's any that really stand out from the edges or they don't line up when I have the deck just stacked on its side. I can see really quickly then if anyone is standing out. Right, like this one right here. You can see this one pokes out. It's really obvious from the shadow on it, so that's one that I will probably give a little. I think it's probably gonna have to go here. Yeah, that's nicer. Okay, and then this one's poking up a bit. Oh, there we go. Right, now it's nice and smooth. So sometimes it just takes like a quick second to reset, and away we go. All right, so now both sides are done, and I've just quickly double checked them to see if anything really dramatically stood out. So now they're, whoops, they're all nice and even on the side. So now I'm going to do the top and then the bottom of the cards. So it's basically the same process. I guess let's just do the bottoms. So this is a little trickier because this does not have a very deep bed on it. So because it's such a shallow platform here, it gets it's a little more frustrating to set up the guide. Is it going to be, I think, a little more? Yeah, I think that's going to make me happy. So let's just snug this right up against here. And it's such a small amount of card to work with. So definitely the guide wants to move a little more because this top guide tends to want to pull the tape over. So I try to be a little bit more careful when I'm setting that end up. Okay, there, that seems perfect to me. So I just want to make sure that my card is perfect. And then, yep. And then we just do the same thing with the whole rest of the deck. Just pop them in there and chop them off. I have done this with scissors, and I do have to say it is much less exacting to do it with scissors. If you only have one deck that you're going to do, you might not necessarily want to invest in a paper trimmer for yourself. I have several decks. I don't know how many. I don't keep count. That just seems wrong to try to put a number on it. So I've trimmed a number of Oracle decks. I trimmed my Enchanted Map by Colette Baron Reed. I trimmed my, let's just double check this one. I think I pushed it over the guard just a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, that's nicer. I've trimmed my Wisdom of the Oracle deck. I've trimmed my original Rider-Waite-Smith deck from US Games because my dog chewed it and ate it. So I had to, if I wanted to save it, I had to take some border off and take some of the printing off the bottom to make it to make it look like a usable deck again. It's still my favorite deck, so I absolutely love it, and I'm so happy that I trimmed it because now it just looks fantastic now that it's been trimmed. Let me see, what else have I trimmed? There's my Energy Oracle cards by Sandra Ann Taylor. Those turned out amazing. I don't understand quite what some of these. I mean, I understand if it's just because of the way your printer works that you don't, you want to make sure that when they're trimmed, everything fits right, and it's the way you've formatted things for forever. And some decks have beautiful borders. I don't find that these plain white ones particularly add much, so I'm fine with letting them go. And if I'm going to color my edges and have the edges be that beautiful purple like what's on the back, I mean, I feel like that white border then is going to detract from the edging. I have other decks that have like a really beautiful decorative edging, like the Shadowscape Tarot. That one has those beautiful metallic lavender borders. Why would you want to remove those? They're stunning. I mean, I would love if that's one of the few decks where I'm just like, could you print it bigger? Could you give me larger cards so I can see more of that artwork? Or go borderless so that the print is just that much larger. so that we're getting the full effect of it. Yeah, no, that one's okay. Sometimes they shift just a little bit on you, and I like to make sure. Oh yeah, see, this one's got a little bit too much black border on it. And these two. So this is the time to put them through, because then once I do the top, everything will come out even when the top's done. So it pays to be meticulous. You end up with a nicer end product. And I mean, my decks last me a million years, so I'm not going to be... I don't usually, unless I really don't enjoy working with a deck, I don't resell my decks. So because I know I'm the only one that's going to ever be using them, I'm not too worried about what happens with them. Let's see. Yeah, that's better. And it's just like a smidgen of black border that's left there, right? So yeah, let's see if we can just move this slightly away from the guide there. Okay. But it is, I mean, it's a bit of a process trimming it. I have been so pleased. There's only one deck that I trimmed that I thought, well, I mean, I can maybe make it work, and it came out horribly. And I was really like, ugh. And I actually got myself a second copy of the deck when it went on sale. And, you know, I mean, fair enough. I should have known when I looked at it. Just the way the wording was done, it was like right to the edge. And when I trimmed where I could trim, it just made the cards really square. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the look of it. So I was like, well, you know, live and learn. So these things happen. All right. So I will just bring you back when I'm doing the top edge. All right. So we've done the two sides and the bottoms now, and they're not going to be perfectly even, like you can feel that it's, but that's going to get fixed when the top gets done, because some of them I did. This one I'm still going to do, but you can see, because the colors on the bottom, when you fan it, you can very clearly see if there's any that still have any black ink on them from that little outline border. So this one and this one. All right. Just because now I'm fussing about it. So, and sometimes when you edge the deck and add the coloring to the deck, you're not really going to see. It's not going to be noticeable depending on what color you edge it with. But because these are such light pastel colors, I feel like it is going to stand out visually to my eye when I do it. So might as well just make it. And sometimes like you push it a little too far up underneath your guard, and that will happen where you'll get a little bit of unevenness. And it's definitely more problematic when doing the short ends of the deck, the top and bottom, than when we're doing the long sides. With the long sides, it's not quite so easy to tuck it underneath the edge of your guide. But you know, I do go through once I have it set, I go through very, very quickly, and then I will go and just fix up any little bits, right? So now we're just going to set that top. So I'll get this where I have the blade there, so it's against the blade, so that'll hold the card in place. All right, so that's where that is. And it's not like we're taking off a lot on the top and bottom. It's just a little smidgen. Okay, so let's go there. I'm happy with that. All right, so that blade's down to just hold it and keep it from sliding, because we don't want to trim one to where we like it and then do the rest and they're all off and then we have to go back and do everything again. That has happened definitely before. So I learned my lesson after making mistakes a few times. All right, so that should be good. That is nice and snug there. If we go back against there and we come down, we're not catching any paper. All right, so what a difference from how they first looked with those white borders. Like the difference is just amazing here. So they will look so cool once. Let's do it this direction. I seem to be a little bit quicker going this way. So once we get the edges on there, and also I have a little corner punch, so I'll do that after I get these trimmed. And then that should be, then it'll just be time to sit and color the edges. All right, so I'll bring you back when this is done. All right, so we're done trimming all 4 sides. And this is what we have now, which is, I love this size. This is much closer to an actual playing card size, which I find to actually be really, really comfortable. All right, so now I just need to get rid of the corners. So let's tuck this out of the way. So you do end up with a little pile of papers, but that's all right. So now we have a smaller, lighter deck. So I am thinking, because it's little, I'm just going to do a tiny, tiny corner. I don't want to take too much off. All right, so let's see. All right, we'll go with the small and see how that looks. So this punch I also got on Amazon. I think this was like $19 or something. The Karumaru Pro. So there we go. So we have, instead of the squared off corners, a little tiny bit of rounding. Let's just tuck this in a little snugger, see if we can get a bit more off of there. I think I'm going to be happy with that size corner. I don't think I want to go much bigger. So let's see. So this is the original size card, and it's almost the same corner size. So let me see. Yeah, that is the medium corner. I don't know that I want that much of a corner. I don't know. Debate. I could be here all day making decisions. Yeah, I think maybe I like that. No. Do I want that bigger corner? How much is that going to change the profile? Not too much. It's not too much of a difference if we go for that larger corner. I don't think any of these, the words go so far to the corner that I'm worried about. Maybe this one. Let's see how this one looks. So if we, yeah, I think that might be okay. Well, maybe we should just try it. If I don't like it, then I'll know, right? But if I don't like it, I'm committed to doing the whole deck if I punch one. There is a big debate. Yeah, I'm going, let's go big or go home. Oh, that's interesting. There we go. All right. Yeah, maybe I like that a little better. Okay, well, if that's the one where the writing comes closest to the edge and it doesn't bother that, so I think that's what we're gonna go with. All right, so now just to do the whole rest of the deck. So this is probably the part that actually takes the longest, and I find to be the most tedious out of the entire process is actually doing the edges. And you can see where things were a little bit off on some of these, and there's a little bit of black border at the edge, but oh well. So without going back through the entire deck and trimming everything else down by like 1/8 of a millimeter, we're just gonna learn to live with it. And I won't let it bother me. Yeah, that's gonna be great. All right. So because this is the most tedious part of the entire process, I will just bring you back when we're done and we'll have a flip through. All right, so we've done all of our corners now. So this is what our deck looks like. So it's definitely smaller. So this was the original card size. And now this is where we're at with the cards. So we've taken all those borders off. So the backs are, I love these backs. They're just fantastic. And of course this deck has the extra card, the unknown card. So I'm just going to leave that in with my deck because I think that's going to be, oh yeah, they shuffle like a dream. All right. So if we want to color the edges, we're not just going to take a felt and just start coloring. So you can do a few different ways. And let me just grab that. I'll be right back. Okay. So one of the things we do need to have on hand is a bit of tissue or paper towel. So I've looked at the colors. I kind of like this darker purple, but I'm thinking, oh, this ink is still, that's why we have paper towel, so we don't get the ink everywhere. So if you do stamps, it does take much longer to dry than felt. I kind of think maybe, I think I'm going to go with this one, which I'm pretty sure was this. Yeah. This one is much darker. Okay. Yeah, let's do this lavender color. I like that. All right. So basically, we just take the felt and very carefully you just draw along the edge. So I don't know how well it's going to show up. And the paper towel is just in case you end up doing something like that, you can just wipe it off because they do that nice finish on these. And the cards will move in your hand, especially when you're doing the longer edge and you get towards the end. So we're just making sure we've got nice solid coverage all the way around. And then we take a little cloth and go along with the cloth. And that just gets any extra that's gotten anywhere. And these are pretty good. This is a Crayola Super Tip. So if we chuck that in the middle of the deck, it doesn't show up much now, but you can see like just that little line, right? So once we get through all of these, it's quite the difference, but it is a very, to me, I find this actually to be a really soothing process and quite quick. And if I feel like I've slipped it all, I mean, definitely I find if I'm doing something with like a Sharpie or any permanent marker, because these are washable, I'm not super worried. They come off really, really easily. the edges, it goes into the paper and it stays nice on the paper, but anything on the actual cardstock itself just wipes clean. So I think they're kind of my preference now. I've done it with the ink stamps, and I've done with the Sharpie Jiffy marker. My goodness. And I think so far I actually really like these, the washables, because they're so much faster, they're so much easier to wipe clean. And if I get it on my hand, it also washes off clean. So, and it gives you really good coverage, and you can get a huge variety of colors. So you're not just stuck with one, you know, everything's going to be black now because you've got one black Sharpie. You can just go and get like washable kids markers from the dollar store and edge your decks. It definitely makes a difference. The little bit of customization actually just makes the decks feel so much better. The few decks of mine that I have actually taken time to edge, just experimenting with different finishes and different stamps. It makes so much difference for how the deck feels. Like, it's, to me, it's just like the visual of it, it's so much nicer to use. It just gives it, like, energetically, it totally changes the deck, I find. So I feel like it's a worthwhile process. This might be a little bit slower, but I feel definitely like it's worthwhile doing. So even if you don't choose to trim a deck, choosing to edge a deck, because some decks come with that beautiful foiling. And if you're getting independent decks, they often now, it seems like that's the thing. Almost everything you look at Kickstarter, it's like, oh, if we get enough pledge money, everybody gets foiled edges. Which is nice, but after a while, the foiling chips. With this, once you get some wear on the card and it starts to get, you know, the color shows through, you can just color the edges again. So it's actually kind of nice when you do it yourself for how it holds up. I find, I mean, especially some of the decks I've had foiling on, where you open up the deck, you open up the brand new box, and there's glitter that comes out everywhere just because the cards have shifted and moved inside the packaging enough that bits of foiling have come off and, you know, left their presence to be known everywhere. And so then you got a big glittery mess, and then use the deck a few times and the edges start to come off, like this one over here. This one, you can see the chipping on the edges already. I don't know how well it necessarily shows up under camera, but it definitely, from my viewpoint when I'm using it, I can see all the chips and edges in this, and I haven't been using this deck this long. But I mean, it does, when they show up looking like this all chipped and everything, that's a little bit upsetting. When you're using it, it starts to look like that, then it's kind of to be expected. I've had some, though, that the foiling used to be so well done. Some of the old Hay House decks, like the Enchanted Map, the old version of it, that foil never moved. That stuff was like rock solid. It was amazing foiling. But all right, so what, only 68 more cards to go? All right, I'll bring you back when we're done. All right, so we are done. So that's what it looks like now. It's got this really just luxurious, magical feel to it now. I love the purple edges, and I'm so glad that I did it. So we went from the original white border down to this size, which it's still not super, super small, right? It's just that, oops, little bit that comes off. Oh, there we go. See, really glad that I took the leap. And you know what's interesting? I never even noticed before is that the little borders at the bottom are different colors for each suits. And I actually didn't notice until I took the white borders off that, and I was fanning through them to see the trim on the bottom, and then I realized that they were all actually color coded, so that's kind of fun. The things that like you just don't notice. I was all caught up in like what's happening in the pictures, right? But it shuffles beautifully and it's not coming off on my hands, and actually very little actually ended up coming off after wiping down and edging every single card and giving it a wipe. There's not much that actually comes off of the cards, but now it actually gives it a really, really nice, it's a really yummy, luxurious, really mystical feeling deck now. And I mean, I loved the deck before. I loved the artwork. And it was kind of on my wish list for a long time. And then I saw, and I'm going to link below when I find which video it was, but it's a channel I just found actually like maybe 4 or 5 days ago. And I saw that she had trimmed it and then edged it. And I was just like, oh my God, that's amazing. And, you know, so the deck had to come off my wish list. It's a gorgeous, magical little deck, though. And I haven't seen too many people with this deck, and I don't know why. It's just absolutely like, look at that 3 of Swords. That Queen of Cups. She's kind of fabulous, right? She's not just like sitting there staring into her bowl anymore. She's kind of just fantastic, sort of dreamy, sort of trance-like. It's a beautiful deck. Look at that 8 of Wands. Yeah, absolutely love it. I love the way it feels now. I love that the when you edge it, it actually softens the edges a little bit. The act of going around with that, moistening the edges with that felt, just that little bit, just softens it up so it doesn't feel like you've just trimmed it. It doesn't feel like, this even feels more like, this feels like a rougher edge now than this does because of doing that edging. That's one thing that I did notice when I've done edging on a couple of other decks, that it actually totally softens up the edges and just makes it just feel really smooth and really luxurious. So this is totally going to be a new favorite of mine to play with. I love the backs. That looks absolutely lovely. So happy that I've done this. Yeah, now when you fan it, you don't see that harsh white edge. It's got a really nice finish with that purple. Totally glad I took the leap on that one. All right, I hope that this might have inspired you to do some customizing and modifying to your own decks. And if you're still here after all of that, I would love if you would hit that little like button down below. And if you feel called to, if you wanted to subscribe to my channel, and just stick around for some little flip throughs that I do and some readings, I would love that. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.